welcome to another adventure in literature, another adventure in Guyanese literature. What we attempt to do on a program like this is to get in the head of the writer or some background material other than what we can deduce from the writing. So first off, what were some of the factors that influence you to write?
I don't quite recall, but I do know I did a lot of reading. And at some point, I said to myself, I can do that. And therefore, I decided to write from within myself about the things I knew and understood. So that's how my first book came about.
It is said to write well, you must also read, or read a lot. What were some of the books, or what was some of the literature that you were reading at that time?
Well, I read all the literature I could afford to read, and that I found in the public library. I read books by Daniel Defoe.
Yes.
I read Robin Hood. I read anything I could get my hands on that was inexpensive. That was the primary
source, the
source.
National Library. What other sources were there? Bookshops in Georgetown?
There were bookshops. People were selling books, but the books were too expensive for me. I couldn't afford any of them.
Wow. Okay. As I said earlier, to write well, you must also read. And I'm glad that you also associated getting your books from the National Library, because some Guyana on the whole, I think, overlook that source of books, and you can get lots of good reading material from the library, because we do, at the National Library, we do make that effort to get the books on time to the reader. In fact, we've done a number of things to get books to the reader. Who were some of the people, let's go to school days. Who were some of the people that you ran with at that time? That were also readers, let's say.
My best friend, a young man named Cunha, Cecil Cunha.
Yes, yes.
There were people, the names of whom I can't readily remember, but we would read books, discuss them, mention them to one another. If I read a good book which I enjoyed, I would mention to Cecil Cunha. He would mention to somebody else, so that there was a run on the books.
Beautiful.
And we kept the librarian busy.
Beautiful. That's a good way of reading. After you have consumed that book individually, then you read that book in a group. Then you can share. You have built a kind of social space where you can share ideas, and that's a lovely thing that you have done. So we can pinpoint one, that reading is one of the factors that led you to write. What other factors perhaps can come to mind now? That
another was my headmaster. His name was Richard Persaud.
Of which school?
St. Ambrose,
St. Ambrose
School.
Queenstown.
Queenstown, yes. And He spoke of books so lovingly. He
Ah,
spoke of books as if they were personal friends.
which indeed. John Agar wrote a lovely poem for World Book and Copyright Day, and he personalized books. But go on.
The way this man spoke of books and reading made me want to read, made me want to become familiar.
Hats off to teachers like those who perhaps could guide the students, because many times how many times we have from small days, we all drawing, we all show the propensity to draw. What happened to us now? We've lost it. But if we had a sort of teacher that are mindful of that ability, or that, let's say, genius perhaps, then we could have been guided just like how you were guided to read and read more. Hats on to teachers, your headmaster and other friends in your group. Say thanks to people like those. Without people who can see the value of reading, see what it can do to you. Later, perhaps we can, when we look at your books, we could see, and this is relative, what a book or what literature could do. There are books that have changed the world, there are books that have made a difference. But then it's all relative. You can do so much, you can write. Okay, you can write what you feel. But then it is for the public. It's left in the public domain, how they respond to that book. Let's move on a bit now to your first book. How did that come about? Your first book, To Serve With Love.
That came about in a rather humdrum way. I was at home one day doing nothing, and I had read a book about which I had mixed feelings. And I expressed those feelings rather vehemently. And
in the book?
No. After reading a book I had got from the library, and I think my landlady it was who said, "What are you complaining about?
This
Could
is still
you
in
do-"
Guyana?
Yes.
Good, go on.
"Could you do better?"
Huh. And you've gone on to do great things. Go
And
on.
I said, "Why not?" And afterwards I thought of my answer. Why not?
And it kept haunting you.
Yes, until one day I got some note paper. I sat down and I wrote about the things that mattered to me. And when I was finished, I said to my landlady, "I've written a book." So she said, "Why are you telling me? Do something with it."
Great.
I said, "Well, I'll try." I wrapped it up and I took it to a publisher, who told me very courteously to leave it there and somebody would read it. So I left it on the counter and went home.
Encounters with publishing, yeah.
When this man called to tell me they liked what I wrote and would be publishing it, I was overwhelmed.
Great. And that was your first effort.
That was my first effort to serve with love.
Let me get this right. It was, you started that in Guyana?
No.
Okay.
No.
Not,
That was in England,
okay. And your first effort was in Guyana?
in Guyana.
Okay. Okay. Great, great. That first effort went on to be published. That first book that you showed to your landlady was published eventually?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
and it was a surprise to her as much as it was to me.
But she sort of was goaded you to do things because she asked you, why were you complaining? Then she asked you, why show it to me? Why don't you get it published? So she was sort of a source of getting you on the road to writing and publishing.
I suppose so.
Yeah, yeah. What about yourself? How you felt about after you finished writing this piece of work? You've gotten out the things that you wanted to say in the way that you wanted to be said. How you felt about that?
I still don't know.
Okay.
I didn't, there was no sense of achievement. It was an initial effort.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how it felt to be an author. I wasn't convinced that I was an author. I didn't know what a publisher would feel or think.
Or what he's looking for, what a publisher editor would be
Yes.
looking for. Uh-huh.
And I took it to the publishing house, and nobody seemed anxious to read it, but I was told to leave it, and somebody would be in touch with me. So I left it on the counter with my name and address. I was off home.
Let's turn to the subject matter of To Serve With Love, classroom dynamics. Your first job. After you were looking for a job, a man with a load of qualifications, a scientist, qualified scientist, background in the military, Royal Navy, Air Force, sorry,
Air
Royal
Force.
Air Force. With all of that, right, you could not get a job. And there are reasons why you could not get a job at that time in the UK. So let's turn to the book now and tell us about how it evolved. You're in the classroom situation and afterwards sitting down to write. What I want to get at is, you've got this writing in your blood now. You feel that you want to say something. All right, let's talk about it, the content of the book.
The writing, the feeling about writing had nothing to do with the classroom.
No.
The feeling of wanting to be a writer or of writing something of consequence was there for a long time. Getting a job was something totally different. However, it's a difficulty trying to explain how a black man feels when he is rejected
Over and over.
over and over. I did not think after a while that any application would be useful. I had to think of something else. When I wrote this book, I was in a desperate situation.
Could you explain? If not, let's go on.
It was a situation where what else could I do? What else do these people want of me? I was fully qualified for lots of work, but they all seemed to want something else or something more, as if nothing I could produce was good enough.
What a situation.